I silently vanished after uncovering my wife's infidelity after 3.5 years of marriage. A year later, my ghosted ex-wife tracked me down after learning of my wife's betrayal. I relocated to the mountains. I'm not certain why I'm documenting this, but perhaps it will provide guidance to someone. After 3.5 years of matrimony, I discovered my wife's infidelity in February 2018. I held a position as a director at a technical sales company that occasionally demanded extensive travel, but also allowed me to work remotely upon return. My wife maintained a highly profitable position. Although tension had developed due to her increasingly extended work hours and my business trips, we still maintained what I would describe as a reasonably solid marriage. Background: I encountered my wife, now my ex, at a barbecue hosted by a mutual friend 5 years ago. We connected instantly when we began conversing. To be candid, I felt incredibly fortunate to be with such an elegant and articulate woman. My unpolished demeanor somehow captivated her. After several weeks of dating, we found ourselves completely enamored with each other. Our encounters at each other's residences inevitably led to passionate moments. Following 18 months of courtship, we tied the knot and moved into a spacious apartment while accumulating savings for a house down payment. The dynamics shifted after the initial 3 years of marriage. Though my feelings remained unchanged, I noticed she would initiate disputes over trivial matters. When I addressed the late hours and increasingly frequent work gatherings, she would become irate. As she climbed the corporate ladder, she claimed it was an essential aspect of paying her dues. At least that was her rationalization. She pointed out that since I was also absent for weeks at a time, I had no grounds to question her. In reality, I only took trips lasting 3 or 4 days every 5 weeks or so. I assured her I could certainly reduce my travel commitments. These circular arguments never reached a resolution. In retrospect, I was oblivious to my wife's affair. Apart from our diminishing intimate life and her consistently late work hours, I would never have suspected anything amiss. I simply attributed it to work exhaustion, though being repeatedly rejected when initiating intimacy had impacted my self-esteem. While she possessed a work mobile phone and might have been using it, I didn't witness the secretive messaging I'd read about in other accounts. She utilized our spare bedroom as a home office and spent considerable time there. Around September 2017, Kathy began returning home from work only to depart for work engagements in the evening. This escalated from once weekly to over 3 times each week. Though I'm not naturally suspicious, she would undoubtedly attract attention, and I recognized she would need to deflect some male advances at her workplace. Despite working alongside more male executives than female ones, she projected an image of being wholly focused on her career. My first inkling of her infidelity surfaced a month before D-Day. She had made a brief stop at the grocery store before returning home. When she requested my assistance with the groceries, something pink caught my eye from beneath the front passenger seat of her vehicle while I was retrieving items from the back seat. It was my wife's undergarment. I recognized it from her preferred lingerie store. In hindsight, its presence was a glaring red flag. She always removes it first from beneath her clothing during moments of passion. I'm unsure why, but the sight made me physically ill. I couldn't rationalize why it was concealed beneath the seat. I maintained my silence. My heart must have been thundering so violently that I nearly lost consciousness because upon returning the bags to the kitchen, Kathy inquired about my well-being, noting that I appeared as if I'd witnessed something supernatural. I dismissed her observation. It required immense effort to mask my emotions, but I strived to appear composed and unaffected. That evening and the following day, I resolved to investigate whether she was involved with someone. I began contemplating all the signs I might have overlooked. Beyond the undergarment discovery, I lacked concrete evidence. She works in a downtown office complex in our fairly substantial city. I decided to temporarily shelve the infidelity suspicion and focus on showing her more attention. I prepared an elaborate meal and set the table with fine china, silverware, and candlelight one Friday after work. I purchased a bouquet and an exquisite bottle of wine. When she arrived, breezing in as usual after work, I gestured toward the dinner and everything I had arranged. She apologized, explaining she needed to meet colleagues at a local establishment. She mentioned needing to shower first, but could share a light snack with me before departing. I must have fallen completely silent because my insides churned violently. I won't detail the fury I experienced at that moment, but I had reached my limit. While she showered, I discreetly placed my work mobile in her back seat, having considered this as a means of tracking her location using my personal phone. Afterward, I entered the kitchen and disposed of the meal and flowers. Post-shower, she emerged looking radiant as ever. "Shall we eat?" she suggested. "Never mind, enjoy your evening with colleagues," I replied. She gave me a peculiar look and inquired if I was upset. "I'm disappointed that you never prioritize time with me," I expressed. She became agitated and sarcastically commented on my short temper while accusing me of childish behavior. I muttered foolish me as I stood there, allowing reality to sink in. For once, I thought we could spend the evening together. She merely flashed a knowing smile and stormed out. After her departure, I activated my secondary phone and began monitoring my work phone's location. She halted at her usual establishment about 20 minutes away. I decided to verify her presence. Indeed, her vehicle was in the establishment's parking area. I positioned myself in my car across the street, feeling like an intruder, but convincing myself I needed to quell my suspicions about her whereabouts. Approximately an hour after my arrival, I observed her exiting with a male companion who appeared to be an executive from her company. He drew her close and kissed her lips. My entire body went numb as my stomach contracted painfully. They entered a different vehicle together and departed. You can guess their destination, a hotel 10 minutes away. As I idled on the street beside the hotel, I watched them exit, hand in hand, and enter the building. I'd witnessed enough. I felt utterly foolish. I began pounding the steering wheel in rage. That was the breaking point. Something within me completely shut down. I'm uncertain whether I experienced an out-of-body moment or briefly lost consciousness, but upon recovering, I desperately needed a drink. At this juncture, my life veered onto an unexpected path. I simply began driving away from the city, replaying the scenes I'd just witnessed. I was weeping from anger, though I'm reluctant to admit it. I discovered a charming tavern on the outskirts, approximately 30 miles away, and entered. Seated at the bar, I ordered a drink. The bartender, a woman, remarked that I appeared utterly dejected, so I must have looked thoroughly defeated. You could say that, I responded with a half-smile. A gentleman settled beside me and initiated conversation. Though socializing wasn't my inclination, something about him put me at ease. We engaged in dialogue, and eventually, my wife's infidelity emerged as a topic. I confided that my only desire was to distance myself from her and forget everything. "You're not alone, friend," he responded, offering a supportive pat on my back. After a brief assessment, he added, "I experienced something similar a few years back. I believe these things happen for a reason. Your life can take either a positive or negative direction from here. I assure you, at this point, everything depends entirely on your choices." His words, for some reason, jolted me from my despondency. Though aware of my pain, I've always maintained a rational perspective, and he was absolutely right. We introduced ourselves. His name was Ree. I genuinely appreciated his down-to-earth nature, despite his rural background. "Are you planning to move out?" he inquired. I suppose I hadn't contemplated that far ahead. I was experiencing a fight-or-flight response, and I knew I couldn't remain in proximity to this woman any longer. "I have a proposition, and I feel genuinely sympathetic to your situation," Ree continued. "When the time comes, I have a mobile home on my property if you feel the need to relocate. It needs some attention and isn't luxurious. Why not visit and see if you could envision yourself temporarily residing there? I'll offer you an excellent deal. You could even park it on a beautiful piece of land I own. I'd appreciate if you could watch over it for me. It might help you escape your predicament, just a suggestion." I took a moment to process his concept. "Hell, honey, if I could have escaped my unstable ex-husband years ago, I would have jumped at the chance to live in his trailer or anywhere just to clear my head," added the bartender, who had been following our conversation. Perhaps this was exactly what I needed, though it felt like entering the twilight zone. "Yes, I'll consider it and maybe inspect it," I told Ree. We parted ways and agreed to meet at his property in a few days. I began to feel as though I had some perspective and an opportunity to escape what I perceived as unbearable heartache combined with a nightmare. One thing was certain, I would never desire to spend time with my wife again. I find infidelity utterly repugnant, and it has always been my absolute deal-breaker. When I arrived home that evening, I settled on the couch. Kathy emerged and inquired about my whereabouts. "Where have you been?" I countered, facing her. "You know I went for drinks," she replied. I asked directly, "Are you engaged in an affair?" She appeared startled but quickly composed herself and responded, "No, why would you ask that?" I informed her that I'd heard she might be seeing someone at work. "Who told you that?" she demanded. "Someone I know," I replied, keeping the source anonymous. After declaring, "You're being ridiculous," she accused me of being intoxicated and irrational, then questioned my whereabouts. "Having drinks at an establishment with friends," I remarked. Despite her evident desire to probe further, she retreated to our bedroom and retired for the night. Now possessing evidence of her months-long deception, I opted to sleep on the sofa. Sleep eluded me completely as images of her with this man haunted my thoughts. I felt self-pity and disgust, but then remembered Ree's trailer offer. The thought lifted my spirits, almost like an epiphany. Something must be amiss with me because the fight-or-flight response automatically activated amid my emotional turmoil, and I gravitated toward flight. The following morning, we barely communicated and proceeded through the weekend as if nothing had transpired. I arranged to meet Ree a few days later. Upon arriving at Ree's property, I discovered he owned a beautiful ranch, and the mobile home was actually quite impressive, approximately 26 feet in length and fully furnished. It reminded me of an enjoyable spring break expedition with friends during college. Ree accepted my offered payment for the mobile home. Truthfully, I nearly took it from him. Following his directions, I drove to view his ranch property. The area was stunning, with abundant trees and native vegetation, hiking and cycling trails nearby, and situated near mountain foothills. Ree had a modest cabin overlooking the property, with utilities available for the mobile home. Ree promised to prepare the mobile home and transport it to the location. Over the following weeks, I attempted to get Kathy to acknowledge the truth, but all I received was gaslighting. I even explicitly warned her that there would be no possibility of reconciliation if I confirmed her infidelity. Consequently, she became more deeply entrenched in her affair fog and began responding with increasingly aggressive denials. I almost found humor in how terrible the denial was. I berated myself for not capturing photographic evidence of them together, and I lacked tangible proof of her betrayal. I concluded that I wanted to exit this marriage after enduring this emotional torment. Rather than communicating my intentions to Kathy, I simply began planning. While she was at work, I started quietly removing my possessions from the apartment and transferring them to the mobile home. At least I felt I was taking action to address the situation. I noticed a change in Kathy during this period. Although she had adopted a more courteous demeanor toward me, I believed it was too little, too late. I felt I needed a respite too, so when she continued attending company outings after work, I prepared to go out one night just as she was leaving. After glancing at me, she inquired about my destination. Meeting some friends, was all I said. You wouldn't enjoy all the technical discussion, and you don't know them. I interrupted as she began to ask more questions. I was using her exact words whenever I had asked to join her office gatherings. Well, have a good time, she added, appearing somewhat offended. I definitely will, I replied. I began forming new connections while working on the mobile home and socializing with Ree at the bar. I felt rejuvenated after spending time with Ree's wonderful family and friends. I also resolved to moderate my alcohol consumption, as I didn't want to develop any destructive habits. I knew better than to drown myself in self-pity, though it would have been incredibly easy at this point. Kathy announced she would be traveling for work the following week. When I inquired about the attendees, she mentioned the executive team and several department heads were going. I hope you have a wonderful time with your paramour, I added, looking at her. I immediately regretted the comment as it sparked a heated argument, though as Ree had informed me, it didn't really matter anymore. I now regret not learning more about her affair partner, AP. The identity of the other man is irrelevant, Ree stated. The fact that she chose to abandon you is what matters. She destroyed the marriage, whether she acknowledges it or not, brother. Facts are facts. Ree should author a guide for the betrayed. Kathy's work trip presented the perfect opportunity to complete my departure. During her absence, I collected all my valuable possessions, including clothing, laptops, and equipment. I didn't take any shared items or furniture. Before leaving, I left a note. Initially, it was an extensive explanation, but I opted for brevity. I wrote, "I hope it was worth it," on a piece of paper, and placed my wedding ring atop the note on the kitchen table. As I departed, I felt an enormous burden lift from my shoulders. I was free. The emotional wounds would require time to heal, and there would be psychological baggage to process, but I had begun the journey. I needed solitude and to swiftly, quietly remove her from my life. I wasn't proud that I hadn't confronted her or forced a confession. I hadn't shouted or raged. In my opinion, she didn't deserve it. She had disregarded everything we possessed, our plans for the future, our dreams of a home and family, and now it was all gone. There was no turning back. I owed her absolutely nothing. She could face the consequences. I hadn't consulted an attorney or formulated any plans. I simply desired a fresh start and mental clarity. The mountain air was exactly what I needed when I entered my mobile home. I resumed running the following week, and it felt magnificent to be alive. While Kathy was away, she sent messages like "just landed" and "having team dinner," and so on. "Where are you?" appeared in several emails. "Why haven't you responded to me?" I ignored all communications. My phone erupted with calls and messages when she returned home. She persisted in trying to contact me, but I maintained silence. Her mother also attempted to reach me after the first day, but I didn't answer. She didn't attempt to contact my father since we aren't close, and he's my only remaining family member. Her messages grew more urgent after a week of being ignored. "What is this?" Read one text. "We need to talk. I'm not sure what you think you know, but nothing is happening. There isn't an affair." She finally texted after a week. "I'm sorry things got out of control. Yes, I was involved with someone at work. You were often away while I was preoccupied with my career. I simply made a mistake. I intended to end it. A mistake. I had been waiting for this confession all along. Yet somehow it only intensified my hatred for her. Why couldn't she have been honest? I had no illusions about a future with this woman. Mistakes don't persist for 6 to 8 months or a year. Her pleas for my return and attempts to salvage the marriage eventually became pathetic. I refused to respond to her even after she ceased bothering me for several weeks. I didn't want her to discover my whereabouts or investigate my life. I didn't want this woman to disrupt my sanctuary. She then began sending hostile messages like, "You're a coward," one day. "You refuse to communicate with me. You have no respect for us. Come home so we can discuss this. Tell me where I can find you. Paul, please, let's talk and make things right." Damn it. Though I don't recall all the messages, they all seem to be excuses with minimal genuine remorse. I let them enter one ear and exit the other. Eventually, I changed my mobile number. Update June 2018. I received an email from Kathy informing me that she had retained legal counsel and intended to file for divorce. I simply responded, "Okay, that sounds appropriate." This triggered a barrage of emails requesting that I meet with her and other matters. She wrote that she would cease contacting me if I agreed to an uncontested divorce. After I consented, I was truly liberated. A few months after vacating our apartment, I never had to see her again. She seemed more concerned about that than I was, though neither of us achieved any closure. For several months, I would occasionally think of her, and yes, the grief would suddenly overwhelm me, like when hearing a song we used to enjoy together. After a while, though, I simply stopped thinking about her. Update 2. Now that I'm officially divorced, life is excellent. In fact, I met a wonderful woman just down the hill from my residence. I was running on the trail when we connected after I helped her replace a flat tire. Though she's a few years younger than me, she's fantastic and quite charming. She calls me her mountain man and adores my lifestyle. Although I'm not rushing into commitment, I also haven't given up on relationships entirely. I have no plans to leave the mobile home anytime soon. I enjoy the outdoor lifestyle and have simplified my existence. It made everything easier for me, including processing the grief and moving past my ex-wife. I understand that everyone processes these situations differently. I was fortunate to be in my 3rd year of marriage and childless. I believe I acted in my own best interests. You don't have to remain with someone who betrays your trust. If you experience something similar, try not to overthink it. Continue living your life as you work on self-improvement. It will improve with time. I wish everyone the best possible life. I've revised this approximately 5 times to enhance readability, and I wanted to provide an update regarding my ex-wife's situation. As mentioned in my previous post, I was concerned that my ex-wife was attempting to locate me. I had relocated about 2 hours away from our former residence. I encountered her last weekend at a coffee shop I frequently visit in the town near my home. It didn't appear coincidental to me. Fortunately, I managed to leave before she noticed me. Third update. I visited town this past weekend for groceries and stopped at my regular coffee establishment. I was using their complimentary internet to complete some work documentation. After finishing, I exited the coffee shop. I was heading to my truck when I heard someone call out, "Paul." When I turned to look across the street, I saw Kathy. My ex-wife was waving at me. Finally, the moment of reckoning had arrived. She hurried across the street toward me, and I stood there in disbelief as she approached as if anticipating an embrace. I instinctively held out my arms with palms up, stopping her in her tracks. She appeared deeply hurt, then said, "I've been searching for you, Paul. I've wanted to see you since I heard you moved here. Can we talk?" I felt like a cornered animal. "Yes," I sighed. "All right, let's find a place to sit and talk for a moment." When she suggested coming to my home, I firmly declined. I led her to a bench outside a small shop at the end of the street. She began by commenting on how much I had changed, expressing admiration for my new appearance, the beard and improved physical condition. She was really turning on the charm, wearing a tank top, small white shorts, and her hair in a ponytail just as I used to prefer. I maintained high alert, recognizing her attempt to activate her sex appeal. I needed to maintain control to see where this was heading. She began by apologizing for the affair. She explained that after my departure, karma had severely impacted her. When her employer learned of the affair, the situation became so uncomfortable that she eventually resigned. Her affair partner, AP, who was engaged at the time, faced criticism and was transferred to a different department within the organization. After he blamed her for everything, she retaliated by informing his fiancée of the truth, which ended their engagement. At this point, she lowered her head and began weeping. I remained silent, simply observing my surroundings. She composed herself and gazed at me for a while. "What do you want from me?" I asked. She assured me that she never intended to have an affair. She explained that corporate politics and positioning drew her in, and her AP used his influence and charm to corrupt her. She admitted that she felt she was exploiting him as much as he was exploiting her. She claimed that after I confronted her about cheating, she had planned to confess. She drank after work to alleviate the guilt she felt at the time because she despised herself. She said that she felt incredibly foolish and isolated, as if her heart had shattered from loss immediately after my departure. She terminated her relationship with her AP immediately. She believed she had to find me to explore any possibility of reconciliation because I refused to communicate with her or respond to her attempts to contact me. She wanted a fresh start and hoped we could begin anew, despite our divorce. I simply stared at her. Then I unleashed my thoughts. You have no right to come here and unravel all the healing I've accomplished. Do you think I'll overlook everything you did to destroy our marriage? As I stated before, we were finished if you cheated. Forgiveness isn't an option. This relationship won't be rekindled. You killed it the moment you betrayed me. You destroyed everything we had. How naive do you think I am? One evening I watched you enter a hotel with him. Were you aware of that? I realized people were beginning to notice that my voice had been escalating. She grabbed my arm and started sobbing. After allowing her to cry on my shoulder briefly, I pushed her away. I deserve all of this, she said, looking up at me. I know I do. If nothing else, would you consider having dinner with me? I'd like to talk more. I want to ensure we're completely honest about everything. You need to spend more time with me than you have today. Paul, please. I love you so much, even though I know you might not want to hear it. Before you left me, I had no idea how deeply I loved you. You broke me as much as I broke you. I can't forgive myself, and I don't want to until the day I die. She began sobbing uncontrollably and hyperventilating. I lifted her up and embraced her, feeling it was my only option to calm her. I realized then that I had shattered her heart as severely as she had shattered mine. Walking together, we found a quiet spot to continue our conversation. How did you find me? I asked when she had regained composure. After contemplating, she responded no, with a slight laugh. She explained that she had encountered Stacy a few weeks ago and inquired about my well-being. Stacy hadn't mentioned seeing me, but Kathy pressured her for information. Stacy was reluctant since I had warned her not to tell Kathy, but Kathy persisted until Stacy finally yielded. However, all she knew was that I lived somewhere nearby and visited town on her days off. She began coming here to look for me. I chuckled slightly at this, thinking, damn, Stacy can't keep a secret. She blushed. We ultimately decided to have dinner at a charming establishment with outdoor seating. I ensured we didn't consume alcohol, as I wouldn't give her a reason to be affectionate or claim she was too impaired to drive back. In fact, we had an engaging conversation. Afterward, I walked her to her vehicle. She insisted that she hadn't dated anyone since my departure and fervently vowed that I was the only person she wanted, so she pressed me hard to stay longer. No, it's still far too early for me to venture down that path, I told her. She pleaded with me to return, but I didn't agree. After providing her with my new email address, I said nothing more. When she requested my phone number, I responded, "You'll just overwhelm it with texts and calls." She wept about it, but ultimately accepted my decision. Before leaving, she promised to email me about returning to town the following weekend. Before she got into her car, I asked her directly, "Would you have forgiven me if I had been the one who cheated?" After pausing to reflect, she replied, "Yes, in time, but only if we saw a marriage counselor and worked through the healing process with extensive communication, maybe even a binding agreement." "All right, maybe I could do that in 5 or 10 years, I answered. "I would wait if that's what it would take," she replied. She then took both my hands in hers, looked me in the eye, and said, "God damn it, Paul, I will always love you and will do anything to prove it." This statement truly caught me off guard. Her words continued to unsettle me even after she left. She had spoken those words with such conviction. However, I still couldn't envision us reuniting. Though I felt better about the incident, I couldn't view her as a friend at this time. Perhaps a friend, but even that remained uncertain. I returned home, enjoyed a long run, had some beer, and contemplated how far I had come. Could someone please assure me that she wouldn't destroy the serenity I had created for myself? I had no idea. I had the luxury of time to process it and gain perspective, but it was all still too vivid in my mind. Last update. Most likely this will be my final update. When I first shared my story on Reddit, the moderators kept removing it. In summary, I ghosted my ex-wife for over a year before she discovered me. She wanted to make amends and restart our relationship. You will be deeply disappointed if you expected me to be the typical forgiving fool and pardon her. She expressed her love and regret for the affair in a lengthy email she sent me last week. She offered to come out and stay with me for the weekend once more. My response: I silenced her. I informed her that I had no intention of reconciling with her. I'm completely content living alone, enjoying my secluded location, and maintaining a simple lifestyle. At 32, I'm not in a hurry to make changes. I have my own path of self-determination and have enjoyed the company of a few women and friends. I made it clear in my email response that I had no intention of reconciling and declined to provide her with my phone number. I no longer know or trust you because you made your choices, I wrote. I hope the best for you, and perhaps we might become friends in the future, but not right now. She was irritated by my evasiveness and responded in a revealing way. She disclosed that she had accepted a job offer in a different state. Her true objective had been for me to accompany her, believing that my remote work would make the relocation simple. She wanted to visit me in person to attempt to persuade me because she was running out of time before moving. Fortunately for me, her time had expired because I had a week of business travel scheduled. I'm grateful I will no longer have her in my life. She will eventually recognize that her time with me is over, but I anticipate receiving a few more emails. She'll need to find someone else, and she might even betray them too. To anyone reading this, make the most of your life. Let go of the past and give yourself the strength to move forward. To all of you, good luck. Thank you for reading. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and click the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.